Hey guys, this is Tom Paul Tipton, your host for the Exchange Podcast. We're coming to you from Living Water Church in Conway, Arkansas. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode and say thank you to those who support this podcast with your contributions. Please like and share us on Facebook and get the word out, and like, subscribe, and share us on YouTube. Send any questions you have and join in on the exchange.
Free sex, free drugs, free education. If I said that, most people would think that I'm talking about Woodstock 99. No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the Democrat Party and the promises that they're making to every American from the age of 18 all the way up to 50s. So this price ticket, this ticket for free education, many are speculating about $1 trillion. And I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on Woodstock 99 because I watched that documentary. It just really infuriated me because the whole documentary was about really white male testosterone and white privilege. And I'm like, yeah, that's what burnt Woodstock down. Let's forget that there were free drugs and, just a lot of craziness going on. Well, that seems to be, I think, what's going on with the Democrat Party. Yeah, all of our student loans are gone. And forgive me because I'm a bit under the weather today. If my voice sounds a little bit off, we had rain and the grass started growing again. Thursday morning, everybody woke up, had student loan debt. Today we don't. So I don't know.
It's obviously hyperbole for those of you who don't understand sarcasm.
Yeah, it's. I sometimes think that the left is just hyperbole. I mean, everything is just. You're going. How does somebody think they're going to take the stroke of a pen and wipe away? Like I said, some people are speculating as high as $1 trillion that's going to be added to the economy. And I've had this discussion with people. A lot of people hate getting into arguments on Twitter and Facebook. I don't, because I look at it, everybody who listens to this knows that I love history, and I especially love the Revolutionary War period. And I think of the founders, as they wrote the Federalist Papers, and they published them in papers, and people read them. Now, I certainly don't put myself in that category, nor do I put 99% of the people who write on Twitter and Facebook in that category. But there is the argument that's going back and forth. However, with that said, did you see Joe Rogan's interview with Mark Zuckerberg?
He got to interview a lizard?
Did you not see it?
No, I didn't see it.
Zuckerberg admitted that the FBI told them to, let me say this, he admitted without admitting to Joe Rogan. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it.
That's going to be one of those things where people are going to say, well, Thomas, now you're just kind of reading a little bit too far into it.
Well, what he says is he says that the FBI came to him prior to the election and said, if there's anything, because we're expecting, there was Russian interference in 2016.
Quote unquote.
Yeah. And so Zuckerberg said that Facebook took it upon themselves to hide the Hunter Biden laptop story because they deemed it to be Russian hoax.
Of course.
Oh man, I'm shocked you didn't see it. It's big news right now.
I'm still stunned by how the way you opened this podcast. But I mean, Joe Rogan's interviewing lizard people, and I have to say this as a joke. I told my wife, "Hi Sarah, love you." I was telling my wife, I said, if Biden really does get rid of student loan debt, I might vote for him. And she said, "No, you're not." And I said that jokingly, but the reality is that's just a bribe.
Sure,
that's
just
all
it
a bribe.
Is. Well, it's a transfer of wealth too.
It is. It's just a bribe. It's transfer of wealth. The middle class is going to get so small that there is going to only be two classes: the rich and the poor. And the thing is, you're right. The left does seem to be hyperbole, because when you hear these stories, you have an MMA commentator.
He's turned out to be a great,
Joe Rogan. Though. But here's the thing. What I'm saying is, 50 years ago, you tell your dad, who I don't know how old he would be 50 years ago, but you tell him
30s.
Yeah, you tell him a guy who does martial arts will be interviewing one of the most wealthiest individuals in the world, and that said person will tell him that the FBI was colluding with private companies to do terrible, do fascistic things, acts, because that's what fascism is where the government controls private companies to do what they want. And if you don't believe me, guys, do you know what those German tanks were made out of? Audi, BMW, all that type of stuff.
Boss made the SS suits.
Exactly. We're talking about when the government comes in and says, hey, company A and company B, you spread this information, you make sure that information doesn't get passed you.
Yeah, it's government and private collusion. That's not the word. It's government and private. I can't think of the word I'm wanting to.
If you really want the real definition of this, it is conspiracy.
It is conspiracy because what it is, and I don't think that a lot of people, because my dad, like I said, he'd been in his 20s, early 30s, 50 years ago. I don't think that they would have been shocked that it happened as much as how that it happened, because 50 years ago, I mean, I'm old enough to remember before there were cell phones and before there was social media. You would have never, you would, and I'm gonna bring the Bible into this. There's things that we read in say like the book of Revelation, where it says that the two prophets lay dead in the streets for 3 days, and they're preaching against the Antichrist. And the Bible says that when they're killed, there's rejoicing going on in the streets. And there's rejoicing all around the world, and people are giving gifts to each other. And 25, 30 years ago, you read that, you knew about TV and stuff like that. But, until the internet and until smartphones, you didn't know this stuff. It may be a few days before you knew it. But now it's real time. Somebody's got their phone out, and as it's happening, you're seeing it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think that it wasn't but 20 years ago that the greatest thing that could happen to us was a cell phone in your pocket.
Yeah, well,
and just a cell phone. And if you wanted to take a picture, you had to bring a camera. And if you wanted to listen to the radio portably, or if you wanted to listen to music in a portable manner, you had to have a Walkman or a CD player. I remember Walkmans, and I'm not that old. So I mean. And shout out to all the people who are older than me who know those things. But
I owned one.
There you go. My dad gave me one and said, just tough. I said, this isn't a CD player. He said, that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, I remember right after the first iPhone came out, was 2007. And there was a news anchor. I don't remember what network he worked for, but he was interviewing this priest, or not a priest, but he was a monk, a Christian monk. And they asked him, they said, so you really believe in, this mark of the beast and all of this stuff that the Bible talks about? And the monk said, well, how can you not? He said, well, how are they going to get everybody to accept this 3-digit number, 666? And he pointed at that guy's cell phone, iPhone. And at that time, most people had no idea the capabilities of that thing.
No.
And especially what it would reach to now, right? We all carry computers around. I mean, I remember as a kid, of course, Star Trek was well over, but even in the 90s when they did the new Star Trek series, and they'd pull these things out that looked like cell phones. And that's what we've got, basically. I mean, the flip phone looked just like that stuff. And so the iPhone comes out, and he said, remember when we used to be able to go out somewhere and we didn't worry about phone calls? Most people had pagers, or you left a message.
Yeah, I'll get back to you when I can.
And even before that, if they wanted to leave a message, they had to leave it with the operator. The operator would then call that person's house. So you could have a message, floating around out there for a day or so.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's a text.
Right.
Call me. Right. So it's all real time. And so what Zuckerberg admits to on this podcast, and I would tell anybody to go back and watch the podcast. Now, I'm sure going to be some colorful language.
I think it's the only episode of Joe Rogan where he talks to Zuckerberg, I'm sure. So if I would
rarely ever.
I'll probably put a link if I can.
I would rarely ever tell our audience to ever go listen to that, just simply because there's a lot of colorful language on that podcast. But on this one, the only reason why I would say it is because he admits to what we already knew. He tells them that the FBI had told them to hide it, basically hide it. We knew that's what they were doing.
Yeah, no,
and now we know.
No, so something I want to touch on is that you mentioned multiple things there. You mentioned Star Trek, you mentioned iPhone, you mentioned Mark of the Beast. And for those of you who listen, this is a podcast that we are both believers in Christ. You know, we have our studio out of Living Water Church in Conway, Arkansas. And sometimes we do dive into these subjects of spirituality and what's going on in the world. When you saw that on Star Trek, anything on Star Trek, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How cool was it?
Well, I mean, you know, outside of the beam, you know, the transportation, you know, I think that will never be possible. But you looked at all of that stuff and you were going, this couldn't happen.
No. But how cool was it?
It was good.
I'm not saying.
No, that's what I mean. It was extremely cool.
But here's the thing: you said there were arguments there. It was that is the coolest thing, but it'll never happen.
Right.
Now it is that was the coolest thing, and it's happening.
Yeah.
And because it was the coolest thing, and that monk pointed to the iPhone and said, that's how they're going to get you to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Think of this. It is no secret that imagery is put into pop culture, television, movies, Netflix, you name it.
To
right?
influence.
So here's my thing. And those of you who are parents, I would say be wary of this. There are so many things that were really cool,
mm-hmm.
and they became real.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest Netflix show of all time, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Deals with demons and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they try to play it off with, oh, you just have satanic panic again because they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. No, I've talked about it many times. I understand how you can split the two from one another.
Mm-hmm.
You can play Lord of the Rings and
Yeah.
it's fine. You know, you're completely cool. But the thing is, listen, what kids are looking at, what people are looking at, and they see on screen, and it's cool. Oh, cool. Did you see how they fought those demon bats? And then you come to find out because anti-hero is now becoming cool.
Yeah.
Deadpool's awesome. Dude, I would not want to have Deadpool near my kids.
No.
One bit.
Right.
Deadpool's awesome, but he's a comic book, and he's an anti-hero. He fights for the good guy, but in, like, a dark way. And here's what I'm getting at. Once the 666 or the Mark of the Beast or whatever becomes cool in the mainstream media, they're not going to have to trick you.
No.
It's going to be, oh, I know that number. Like, why wouldn't I want that ability that they have?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I want that?
They just have to convince you why you got to have it.
Yeah, they just got to convince you of why you got to have it. And then people are going to take it. So what I'm saying is, it's right in front of us. It's in front of your face.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me for a minute. But I had to sneeze, but it just didn't come. But the idea that you're going to be tricked into getting it.
Right.
No, you're not. It's already out there. They're already making people think that certain things are okay. The reason my generation especially thinks it's okay to just say, hey, free money, free money, free money. Man, you have video games where they don't, listen, video games taught me more than schooling did.
Mm-hmm.
And in school, they didn't teach me taxes. They didn't teach me where money comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And in video games, it just doubled down on it. Oh, you just completed a quest. Here's this amount of money. Even though there's a governing body in the video game, they're not going to take your money in the video game.
So would you say that's digital currency?
Oh, yeah, no. And we got used to that.
Yeah.
We got used to that digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
And my generation is very much so like, oh, who cares? Let's just print more money. Because in our brains were numb to the idea of printing more money and just taking more money. For instance, Monopoly. Monopoly is one of the few games. Why do people get mad at each other at Monopoly? It's because that's reality.
Right.
You passed go. Cool, you passed go, but now you owe 10% of how much money you have.
Mm-hmm.
You landed on community chest. Guess what? All the property you have to pay a percentage on the property that you own.
Right.
And the thing is, a lot of people will say, oh, no, Monopoly is a good way to show you how the rich live. Okay, but here's the thing. Even if you have all that money and you land on those things and you have to pay a certain amount of money, you're still going to be pretty ticked off.
Well, and very few people know. I mean, do you know the history of why Monopoly was created?
Mm-mm.
So the guy who created it during the Great Depression.
Okay.
And I think he was a real estate guy. I think he had quite a bit of money and lost all of it.
Mm.
And I think his wife got sick during the Depression. And so he creates this game based off of what he knows, just based off of how real life works, how, money works. And he also knew how and why the economy crashed. So he creates this game. And it was a game that he'd play with him and his wife more or less to get both their minds off of what she was going through plus the depression.
Yeah.
So it was never a game to show you how the rich live. It was a game, like you said, it was a strategy game. It was a strategy of life game.
Well,
because that stuff can work. It can translate.
But you know something, he was smart because who's the real winner if you read the rule books?
Yeah.
The bank.
Mm-hmm.
Every time it says the bank cannot go bankrupt. The bank cannot fail.
Yep.
The bank cannot.
Yep.
And
that's what I mean. He was showing that.
He was showing the reality of it. And when you play Monopoly, and here's the thing, don't play any of these new gimmicky Monopolies. Play the classic Monopoly.
Right.
And you will understand that the reason people get mad at their grandmothers, that I'm talking about me, because they bankrupt them, is because, guys, that's how real life works. I was talking with my cousin, and we joked. He was like, I got an adult job. He's working for some like finance company or whatever. He used to be a bartender, and we were just laughing. He said, "Oh man, I got to get up at like 6 a.m, and then I'm off by like 4 or 5, and all these things." He's like, "But I get dental and I get vision and all this stuff." And he's sitting there and he's going, "Yeah, there's actually a lot more time I have when I'm just working at a job like this, because when you're working at like a bartending job or any type of like service industry job, you do get the socialist communist mindset."
Mm-hmm.
Because what are people doing? People aren't paying your wages. You're not being paid by the paycheck. People are saying, I got an extra $5. Here's a tip.
Yeah.
I got an extra, and that works in that setting, but it just, it's not.
But yet there are waiters and waitresses who get really good at their job and enjoy it because they can make really good tips.
Yeah, no, they can make really good tips, but here's the thing: that is just like you understand this, the music industry. Some people can do really well and master their craft and make some good money on it, but for every one person who masters their craft and gets really good at it, how many are struggling?
Well, a lot of them, yeah. A lot of it is. I remember sitting in the studio with a guy. If I called his name, most of our audience would know exactly who he is, and so I'm not going to call his name because he wasn't running anyone down. But I sat in his studio one day, and he said, well, there were two things he said. He said, if I were a younger guy getting into the industry now, he said I would get into doing scores for video games.
Why's that?
That's where the money's at.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean
I
you
don't
look at the
blame
price
him.
of a video game.
Yeah.
They're expensive. And then you don't just buy the video game. Now you have to buy all of this stuff that goes with a video game.
Yeah.
You want to up your game, as they say, or used to say.
Pay to play.
Yeah. It's like buy this new skin.
Yeah.
Buy this new whatever. And so if you've got a score on a video game, every time that comes in, you get a chunk of that because they're paying you the royalty.
The royalties for what you... And, I mean, one of the most popular video games for the last 20 years is Halo.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard Halo's theme song somewhere.
Right.
The orchestra.
And it showed up in a lot of other places besides just that video game.
Exactly.
And so he said that would be one of the things... That's why he would do it. But then the second thing, he said you have to have deep pockets backing you. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'll give you an example. Years ago, we're going to go since the Elvis movie was out a few months ago. I think it's off theaters now, but I'm using this because this was the time when you could do this. A guy like Elvis could walk into his Sun Studio. We'll just throw that one out there because that's one he went to. Walks into Sun Studio, he records his 5, 6, 7, 8 track record.
Yeah.
The next step was to take that record. Someone took it. Either when you're starting out, it would have been him. He'd have been responsible for it. You take that record to every radio station in every county of every state that's within your general area.
Yeah.
So it was all music at that time was territorial. That's the reason why you had Southern rock and Northern rock and all these different styles of music.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And so they would take the song and they would tour that song around to radio stations. They would try to do interviews in radio stations, like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if we wanted to do that, we could have somebody who's an aspiring artist, and we can do that here because right now you don't have the regulations on podcasting. Although podcasting is such a fast-growing industry right now, I could see the time coming when there will be those regulations. But you could do this with radio stations, and they would go and they would tour that, and they would, hey, here's my record. Or the manager of the band, Sam Phillips at the time, we'll just take him. Sam Phillips really believed in Elvis, so he wanted to make Elvis a hit.
And he did.
And so he would go to all these different radio stations. Hey, this is a new artist that I've recorded. You got to play it.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was, and I'm not so sure Sam Phillips was not guilty of this himself. It was called payola, and they'd slip a little bit of money to the DJ. DJ'd play the record, and so that's illegal. And now it's called pay to play, but the actual term is payola. And so the song would get ready. So then by the time that 3-6 months down the road, that artist would come through to do a concert in that town. Their song, this is where the single comes from, the A/B side single, a song from a single that would be playing. I think Elvis's first hit was "That's All Right, Mom" or something like that. That song was already played on radio stations, at least in one of the regions of the United States. And so he would build his audience. He would build a listening audience, and then it would go national from that point on.
Right.
Today, you have to have a song before a playlist will even listen to you. It's a very difficult process. This is why I don't like socialism, because it's a very difficult process. And one of the things I studied in college was commercial music, and I took a survey of music industry. And I remember we did not just a conversation, we did an experiment, and they know to the point that an artist is going to break. And by that I mean when that artist's song is going to be on the radio, when that artist will reach number one, and how long that artist will stay there.
So
they control it. Lock, stock. Oh, there's a science. You better believe it.
Oh, wow.
There's a science. And that's why I kind of lost my I still love music. I still love to play music. But as far as just trying to get in the music industry, that's why I was like, no.
Is the music industry the most terrifying, powerful entity out there?
The industry, yeah, not the artists.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the industry, for instance, a lot of people want to talk about the Illuminati and all that crazy stuff, and I'm saying,
I don't care about the Illuminati.
No, but what I'm
trying to say, those guys don't scare me. I mean,
no. But I mean, not scary, but I mean, just you look at it and you go, oh, they could probably change the minds of billions.
No, I think so.
You don't think so?
Not the Illuminati.
No. The music industry.
Oh, the music. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, because I've quoted this before. Because I'm trying to remember who said it. He who controls the music controls the world. With the music industry, the guys in the suits, they're the ones who they'll make you or break you. And there's a lot of artists out there that did great, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared. And there was something about them that somebody in the offices didn't like them. You didn't know why. They wouldn't tell you why. But I have a friend who, he was signed with a record label and was getting ready to make a record, and the record was getting ready to go on the shelves. And then all of a sudden the record was pulled, just pulled. He didn't even get it. They didn't even record with him. And they used an excuse because he had cut his hair, which may have had something to do with it, but that was what they said.
Wow.
So that it's so that's what determines it, right? It's just something, it's always something. And it doesn't take much for them to think that the winds of change are blowing in a different direction.
That's the argument for me, at least, why collectivism fails.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do, someone's going to be on top.
Uh-huh.
And even though you may think that you are in a house of 200 and something Congress people, 100 senators, there's somebody. And it's not a dark secret.
But there's always got to be somebody at the top.
And that's what I'm saying. There's always going to be somebody at the top, because there has to be someone at the top. However, that person at the top is not always going to be benevolent. In fact, I think more often than not, it will be somebody who has their own interests at heart.
Yeah.
As we come to see. And here's my thing. Whether it's left or right, don't just get sucked into politics.
Right.
You don't vote for politics. You vote for the policies. Mm-hmm. And something that you were talking about early on when we started was the free money.
Mm-hmm.
And thing is, that's a hyperbole in itself.
Yeah.
Because ain't nothing free. especially money.
Right.
It's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And when people are saying, "Oh, well, I don't care as long as my student debt is gone." Well, guess what? Your taxes just went up a whole bunch. And guess what? Your buddy who's still in school, his tuition just went up.
That's right.
And so we are taking this bill and we keep passing it down the line.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, well, we all collectively agree that we don't want to deal with it, so we're going to give it to the next person.
Right.
I can do that too, but guess what? It's going to come crumbling down. It's going to come tumbling down, and people are just not going to have it.
Well, and this is why that I've said here before, how do you take someone's student loans, let's say $70,000, and I know there's more that's that's low compared to some people with $170,000, $200,000 student loan bill. How do you take that away and then put that back onto them? The scripture tells us that the wicked borrows and does not intend to pay back, but the benevolent gives generously. Okay, Proverbs says that. How do you, Jesus said, "Owe no man anything except to love them." Mm-hmm. And I said on Facebook, and I'm going to say it here: if you really want to correct this situation, it's a simple step to correct it. They won't do it. I'm going to go ahead and preface it with this: they're not going to do it. This is the way to do it. 1, an entrance exam into college. You have to take it. You have to pass it with a certain amount, with a certain score.
Or you can't get into college, period.
You can't get into college. Not with
a
scholarship. Not with a scholarship.
Oh, not with a scholarship.
There is another way to get in, but it's not with a scholarship of that nature. You have to pass it with a certain, and I would set that bar up high. I'm in a high 97, 98%.
I'll play devil's advocate, and a lot of people would say, "Well, what about the people with low income who can't get the tutoring?"
Okay,
or
we're gonna that's second step.
Okay.
The second step is benevolent benefactor.
Okay.
That's kind of like a scholarship, but it's somebody who says, okay, the person is not necessarily, they can't pass. They're smart. They just, for whatever reason, tests don't set well with them. They can't pass the entrance exam. But I believe in this person. I'm going to pay for 2 to maybe 4 years of college, and then when that's paid, they're going to come. They're going to work for me while doing this, and they're going to pay me back by services rendered, because they're going to produce a good and service that I want, that people want, need, and are willing to buy. And I'm going to take a certain amount of money and I'm going to pay for their college. And then after that college, they're going to work for me another 2 years. They're going to be building a career the whole time. This is the other way to do it.
Yeah.
Because you've got somebody who's willing to pay for you to go to school. It's a scholarship, but it's not the same kind.
Yeah.
Then there's a third way.
Military.
Which has nothing. Well, there's military. But this one has nothing to do with college. This is a trade school.
Oh, yeah. No, that is something I stressed. One of my students here at the church who comes to youth group, Thomas, I'm not going to mention his name because he's still a minor.
Yeah.
But he wanted to join the military. He wanted to become a mechanic. And then he settled on, I'm going to go to college.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take out loans. And I asked him, what do you know about loans? He said nothing. So I had the hard conversation, because this is something not many people are telling. His school is telling him, yeah, go to college.
Isn't he thinking about going to the military?
He is.
Go do that first.
Well, I talked to him about it. I went through the whole steps. I'm going to tell you what I told him, because the school, his high school, is telling him, no, just go to college.
No.
Go to college. Take out the loan if you have to. Do these things, because schools suck.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Well, they lie to you.
They lie to you.
Be
They
honest.
make you think. They make 16, 17, and 18-year-old kids, because here's the thing. No, like age-wise, by the time you're 18, legally, you're an adult. Your mind, you're dumb.
Uh-huh.
You are so dumb.
Yeah.
And I was dumb. You were dumb. Everybody's dumb at the age of 18.
Yeah.
You think,
Yeah.
oh, cool, I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want.
Right.
You can't, because you can't even think straight when somebody says, listen, here's free money, but it's not free money. It's a loan.
Nope.
And here's the thing. I told him, listen, do you have $50,000 a year?
Yeah.
No. Okay, do your parents have that? No. Do your grandparents have that? No. And I said, you know what? Neither did mine. Luckily,
Yep.
I had scholarships for certain things.
Uh-huh.
But I did have to take out a loan for one semester.
My
And
loans
that-
got up to $13,000, and that's when I realized this is a racket, and I'm done.
Exactly. And so I told him, I said, listen, you want to be a mechanic, don't you? And he said, yeah. And I said, listen, I think your first bet is to look into these 3 things. Go look at a trade school. Okay, Pulaski Tech here in Arkansas, I hear is just through the roof, just really good with their trades. And then I said, your second bet is the military. I never would tell somebody their first bet should be the military unless they really, really want to.
Yeah.
I say, your first bet, go to a trade school. Check out the trade school. Study. Focus on what you want to do. And while you're at the trade school, I guarantee you, you will be able to apprentice and make some money here and there. If he wants to be a mechanic, there's mechanics all over the place that are looking for free hands to just come in and help and work. You can make that money and you still live with your grandparents. They said you have to pay rent. Boom, you got a job, you're going to school, and you're doing fine. Next thing, if you go to the military, don't go in and then just sign papers. Go in and tell them the job you want and tell them you're not signing up until you get the job you want. Because here's the thing, the military wants you. And if you are adamant, they will work with you.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a disclaimer out there, and that's to save this show's hide. I come from a military family, and they may tell you they're going to give you a certain job. Don't bank on they're going to give you that job.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say, yeah.
Because they will place you where they need you. Because I'm going to go ahead and say that. Look, I'm going to say this, okay? If you want to know what the closest thing to socialism and communism is, go to the military.
Yeah.
Really, go to the military.
Great people come out of it.
I love the military.
Yeah,
I love it, and I'm not talking down against it. But I'm going to say this, and I would tell anybody, I'm not going to say do this under this guy's administration. I'm just going to throw that out there, okay, for a lot of reasons. And I pray for him. He's the president. This show does not disrespect him. We don't disrespect what's that?
We have a few laughs.
We've got our laughs, absolutely. But we would have a laugh if it were a Republican in that office.
We make fun of Trump.
Because we've laughed at Trump, we've laughed at Bush. Why? Because that's what we as Americans do. We laugh at things our leaders do.
We get to point at the king and laugh.
That's exactly right. Why? Because we are the king. We the people are the king.
Yes.
Sometimes we elect court gestures. I'm going to put that out there like that. But what I'm saying is the military, I would tell anybody go to the military because I'm going to get into a little, this is not conspiracy. I do not subscribe to conspiracy theories. This show does not subscribe to conspiracy theories. But I do think there's some things coming. Number one, I can take that from a scriptural standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think the military gives you great skills to survive.
Right.
With that said, and I was talking to someone here, and I won't call or even say because I don't know how much of this information they want out. So that's the only reason why. But if they're listening, they'll know exactly who I'm talking about. We had a conversation earlier this week, and I borrowed. I won't say stole. I borrowed his idea at the company I work for, outside of the podcast here, and we were talking about trade schools, and we're staying on that subject for a minute. We were talking about trade schools, and he was talking about going around to like counties and hitting like schools within that county, and going out and trying to recruit people to come in and work for their company, and the company would pay for it. Well, I work for I'm in electricity. My job, outside of this podcast, my job that I do is electricity. And I was talking to one of the people that is my bosses, and I said, what we should do is I said, we train all of our electricians here in-house. We should go to all these different schools and say, hey, don't want to create a student loan? Come and let us train you. And the way you'll pay for that is we take so much money, and then once you get through for 3 years, we give you that money back at the end of the 4th year.
Oh, yeah.
That's how that works. That's how we pay for that, because we're paying them anyway. And we're going to pay for their education. Don't go to college and get a 4-year or 4 or 6 year student loan debt. Because I'm telling you, one of the problems you're going to run into when you go to college is you're going to pay for some humanities or social science class that's all they're doing is indoctrinating you. That's it. That's all they're doing. They're teaching you some revised form of history, whatever. Don't learn that nonsense. We have to create parallel economies in order to turn this around. It can be turned around.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to do some work. We're going to have to pray first, and then we're going to have to do some work.
That's what I was telling him. I said, listen, your best bet, and again, this is all coming back to that student I was talking about, and this is something we need to encourage our young people. you need to think about what you're going to be doing, not what you're going to be thinking about. Because a mind is useless if all it does is only think and it doesn't do.
That's right.
I can't tell you how many times I have sat around.
Is that like a mind is a terrible thing to waste? I'm sorry, I had to throw that out there.
Good point. And no, we will not dive deep into that racial tones. But oh man,
I'm sorry, I had to say that.
That is a very archaic thought process. If you know anything behind that phrase.
No, go ahead. I just that's what made me think.
Oh, no. It's true though. It's true. When you say it like that and you have the context of what we're talking about, you're right. A mind is a terrible thing to waste when all it does is just think, because the brain isn't just a thinking thing.
No.
A brain is you. A brain is controlling this bone mech that you have with muscles, and it can move.
Right.
And it can do something. It can, because let me tell you something. Some of the best computer engineers that I know, look, maybe they can't move weights here and there like me or you or whatever. But man, are they smart, and they did something with it, and they started creating programs that your computers use and that they need. But here's the thing. I will tell you that they got there because most of the time, not all the time, they just thought over and over and over, but they didn't live a life where they could relate. Mm-hmm. You need to start living a life that is colorful in a sense of talking with different people. Mm-hmm. Go to any type of trade school, and those are not just trade school. Go to any type of trade. Those are some of the nicest dudes. Yeah, those are some of the nicest guys. The welders, the electricians, the HVAC guys. Super nice guys. You know why? Because they're real. You want to know why people say real America is the people who are in trades? Yeah. Is because they're real with you. Mm-hmm. If you have something in your teeth, they'll be the first person to tell you. They'll probably joke about it and make fun of you, but guess what? They're real human beings. They're having a good time. And so I told this student, I said, look into the trade. Look into the mechanics trade, because I know that for a fact there's a lot of mechanics in the area of just Pulaski County alone who are looking for young hands to help them to take on the trade and to move on from it. Because here's the thing. You're not going to get better in life if all you do is sit in an echo chamber, and that's what college is.
Well, you mentioned echo chamber. I'm going to say this about the music industry. One of the best things you can do is move to Nashville and find a good church to go to. Number one, I'm going to say good church, one that is Bible, that teaches the Bible. Yeah. And I'll give a shout. Well, no, I'm not either. I don't know how far I can go with that. But go to that town, and it won't take you long if you keep your eyes open, keep your eyes peeled, and look. There are plenty of studio engineers and sound guys and producers and arrangers that if you create a friendship with them and let them know up front, hey, I want to get into this industry. I don't have the money to go to college. I want to get into this industry. And tell them what you want to do. They're going to kind of shut you down at first. They're not doing it because they're snubbing you.
They're doing it to see if you're going to stick around.
They want to see if you're going to stick around. They want to see how serious you are.
That's just how life is.
That's right. And you got to realize they have worked years to build a reputation, and they understand one bad move in a bad direction, and it's all over. Yeah, they know that, so they play it very close to the cuff, and they're very serious about it. But build that relationship with them, show them that you're trustworthy, and let them know, hey, I'm willing to work for free long enough to learn how to do this. Yeah, they'll start bringing you into the studio. They may have you take out the trash. They may have you. They're going to give you bad work.
Might be a gopher for a while.
You very much will be a gopher. They may tell nowadays. Years ago, even when I remember when I was getting into it, that was kind of starting to change over. Everybody was going digital, but there were still people who did analog recordings, and so they may. One of the biggest ways that you'd earn their trust is say, "Hey, I'm going to have you carry these tracks over to such and such a studio." I know one guy, of course, he was already, 20 years ago, he was already in his 40s. I remember him telling me a story that they did that. And what he didn't know, the tracks were the tracks that they had him to carry over. Now, he was in his 50s, because the tracks they had him to carry over was Freebird, the song Freebird. He had no idea that was in the trunk of his car.
The original.
The original.
Oh.
And that was his first job. That's how he got there, and he handed them, they told him where to go, what address. This was before GPS, right?
Yeah.
So he had to read a map. They told him what address to take these to. He drove them there. They told him what door to knock on. He knocks on the door opens. He says, "I'm from such and such a studio. So-and-so sent me with this to give to you." They took it, they shut the door, and wished him a good day and shut the door.
And for the rest of our lives, we will always have the best sound to drive at 120 miles an hour.
Yeah, because they handed this guy, Leonard Skinnard's tracks to Freebird. And that was his job. That was what he did. That guy went on to make several millions of dollars in songwriting and in different formats. But that's what I'm trying to say.
But here's the thing. Where does that concept come from? I will trust you with little.
Yeah.
So then one day I could trust you with much.
That's right. And I know
because that is the foundation of actually living your life in a way that you can be proud of. Because the thing is, one of the things that my father taught me, one of the few things I remember is, are you willing to put up with this? Because if you put in, I will also help you with.
Yeah.
Meaning, if I'm willing, because I would come home crying after football because we were doing wind sprints.
Yeah.
And it was the first time my body was being pushed past its limits.
Yeah.
And I would just cry and cry and cry.
Yep.
And the first time my dad said, "Listen, you're going to go out there and you're going to stop crying because you can get past this." After that, he knew, because he knows his sons, because a good father knows his sons.
Right.
He knew. He's just crying because he's happy about the attention he's getting when he cries.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not too fond of child discipline, you may want to turn off the podcast here. My dad whooped my behind because he realized you are now doing this for attention.
Right.
I told you to do something. You need to obey me because I know this is best for you. And you want to know something? He created a young man who went on to. I got a lot of accolades in high school. Why do you keep going? I mean, I broke a rib and I was still ready to go back in, and people would say, "Oh, well, that's just abusing your mind to think that you can." No, listen.
It's conditioning your mind.
Listen, your mind can get pushed so far past things. If you can be trusted with a little bit of things, and you're working with somebody who hands you Leonard Skinnard's flippin' album.
right.
Like, you can be trusted with many things. I have been trusted with little things here at this church. Hey, I'll mow the lawn. I mowed the lawn for a couple of months, and then it was, hey, why don't you take over for the youth group? I took over for the youth group. There was about 3 kids. We had 15 kids show up 2 weeks ago. I mean, we have consistent kids coming back and forth, just wanting to come to church. It's been growing. That's a blessing. That is the mindset. And so when people, just to wrap it back up around to what we were talking about at the beginning with this free money thing, guys, there's no such thing as free money, because nobody hands an 18-year-old a loan of like $100,000 for a house.
Yeah.
Why? Because in reality, you have to take care of that house and then pay on it eventually. But you want to know what they will do? They'll jokingly hand you $150,000 to $200,000 student loan debt.
Yep.
Because they know you will never see that money. They hand it straight to the college. They say, "Hey, here, as the bank, to our college."
Well, the college is already paid.
That's what I'm saying. They just, it's already paid for. That's what I'm saying. When you'll never see it. It's already at the college. It's already there. Because you're not going to see that money. You're not going to blow it on something stupid. They know that they will have you trapped for the rest of your life.
You said something earlier, about monopoly. The bank can never go broke.
Yep.
And Obama is the one who decided that the federal government would take charge of the student loans, and he made the banks mad when he did that. Because he believed everything was handled better at the federal level. But all that was, again, it goes back to a transfer of power or transfer of wealth, because what they've done, they've squeezed the middle class once again, because they've taken this from the poor. Oh, I was listening to, and I'll listen to different podcasts and different radio stuff to, because when you're in an industry like this, you always listen to different revenue, streams that are coming in. And I wish I could say this was original with me, but it's not. I was listening to Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, and Clay Travis, he compared this to Scott's Tots. You remember that on The Office? When Michael Scott promised.
My wife watches that. I don't watch it.
Okay, so Michael Scott goes in and he promises all these kids that if they stay in school and graduate, he'll pay for their college.
Oh, I have seen that episode.
And so, so they fast forward like 12, 15 years.
Yeah.
These kids graduate.
And they all stayed there. They were like, oh, I'm going to stay up on my grades. I want to get accepted to this college because he said if he's going to pay for it.
It's called Scott's Tots.
Oh no!
And that's what you think about. This is real life mimicking art. That's what you think about. You're like, Joe Biden is now Michael Scott. He has now promised.
Don't you disrespect Michael Scott that way? Don't you put that on him? He is hilarious on purpose, whereas our president is hilarious ironically.
Because it's like you just told all these kids that you're going to take care of their student loans, and you can't do it.
Yeah.
It's illegal what he did. It's unconstitutional what he did, and it's unscriptural what he did. Now I know they don't appeal to that; they don't care, but it's unscriptural because we as Christians, listen to me. As a Christian, I would be the first to tell you that they have mishandled the student loan thing all the way around. But you're the one who went and got the loan. It is your responsibility to pay it off.
I'm gonna argue back and say that is hard for me to argue against because, like I said, at the age of 18, you're dumb.
Yeah.
And
no. They were but here's the deal. That's why I got out, because no one held a gun to my head and said, "Go get the student loan."
No, you're right. No. Here's the thing.
I did the math.
I think your generation was like right before they started beating us over the head.
Oh no, they did it in mine too.
Okay.
They brought us into this room and they said, if you're going to go to college, you're going to make this much more than your peer who doesn't go to college.
But here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to say, and this is something that I advocate for. You know me. I took the loan because I thought it was the only thing I had.
Sure.
Because before I started making decisions for myself, my parents were still divorced.
Yeah.
I wanted nothing to do with my dad.
Sure.
Audience, one of the best things for a child is a father who cares to stick around to at least talk with their kids about things.
Sure.
And who is willing to say, I don't know, when they don't know.
Right.
And because of that, I think a lot of kids don't have that father figure in their life, don't have that figure in their life to tell them, hey, think before you move. Because I'll say this, I'll take your word for it. You guys were beaten over the head too about going to college and getting stuff done, and that's the only way you could be successful. What was lacking for my generation, for the most part, because we can both agree, fatherhood has been severely cut in half since your time.
Yeah.
And without that father figure, without somebody to pull a child to the side and say, hey, I know you really want to go to college, but do you know the consequences behind it?
Sure.
Because that's when a young student, a young man, a young woman who's at the age of 18, when all they've heard is college is the only thing that's going to set you free. College is the only thing that's going to make you better. And when they sit there and they think, oh, shucks, I really need to do this, they take out all the loans because they think that's the only way out.
Yeah.
And this is why, I don't know if you've heard of him. This is why Andrew Tate was banned.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Andrew Tate, I don't agree with any of his misogynistic, and when I say misogyny, I really mean misogyny.
Right.
He had some really outlandish stuff.
But when he's right, he's right.
But here's the thing. He had a father who put boundaries up, who set him straight on certain paths. Love him or hate him, he's still got a lot of money, and sure, he lives in Romania, but he still has billions of dollars. So my biggest thing is this. When you have somebody who is telling you, really think before you do something, he was telling people, you don't need to go to college. You can learn from somebody who's already at the top of their game. And because here's something I've learned. It's like you said. You go to somebody who's doing really good at what they do, and you tell them, hey, I'll work for you for free. I just want to learn how to get into this. They are going to buck you. They are going to kind of push you to the side and see if you can handle Hell Week for the first few months. And then once you get through that, they'll go, all right, I see you're ready to do this. It's, it's the Karate Kid. It's all those movies of where I just wanted to see if you were willing to put up with the dumb stuff.
Sure, absolutely.
Because you have to go through dumb stuff to get to where I'm at.
Well, and that's what people don't see. I mean, so many people now want to be influencers. And so a lot of stuff they're going to college for is stuff that you're not going to make that much money at when you get out. Mm-mm. And if you're going to go to be a doctor I'm going to step out on this podcast and say this right now. I think a lot of the college for people that go to get a law degree is senseless, because some of the best lawyers we've had in this country and in our history never went to college. They didn't go to they didn't graduate high school. Lincoln did not go to college. The man, the Chief Justice Roberts, not the one now, but the one that tried the Nazis at Nuremberg, did not go to college. He just went and passed his bar exam. Am I saying this? No. You need to get training? Go get training. But a lot of what we go to college for is needless and senseless. You ever seen the movie Beautiful Mind with Matt Damon and so it's Matt Damon and Robin Williams, and there's these guys. There's a scene where they're in this bar or something. And
wait, is that Beautiful Minds or is that?
No, it's not Beautiful Minds. What is the name of that? I can't think of the name of it.
Is that the one where he's like, "It's not your fault"?
Yes, it's Matt Damon and Robin Williams.
Yeah,
and this kid just keeps hanging out in the college, and he's basically learning while he's hanging out. And these kids, they're at this bar scene, and they're like, Matt Damon's character is like uber smart.
Goodwill Hunting. And he Will is talking, and these guys are just trying to bully him, and they're like, I got my degree from, named it $12,000, this was back, however much. So let's say $25,000, $30,000. And Will, Matt Damon's character, says, yeah, and he kind of chides him over that. And then he says, I learned from the local library, $1.20. And, if you want to learn about YouTube's going to flag us on this, okay? So I'm going to go, but if you want to learn about economy, you can go and get Leviathan or Wealth of Nations, one by Adam Locke, the other one by Adam Smith, the other one by John Locke. Or you can go get Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler, okay? The reason why I mention him is because in that book he talks about economics and he talks about socialism. He talks about a lot of other things too. But what I'm trying to say is you are getting a drastic contrast between the two, okay? I'm not trying to promote any Nazi propaganda. The book's out there. The book, I just go ahead and tell you, if you rent it or if you go to a library and get it, you're going to be flagged. If you buy it from Amazon, you're going to be flagged. Yeah, I was about to say, I think you can get it. It's just going to put you on a list.
It's going to put you on a list. But what I'm trying to say is, the reason I say that is not to promote it. The reason I say that is because, look, it's an ideology. We're not like a lot of people on the left who tell you don't learn the other side. I'm very much going to be the person to say, go learn the other side. Because you need to know why they believe what they believe, and you need to know how to counteract that. Yeah. Don't argue and get ugly with them. I had a conversation with someone this morning, and he's like, you keep talking about your side. I said, look, we're all Americans here, because it's all over this whole Mar-a-Lago thing where the feds went in and raided. I said, I am not upset over the fact that they're investigating the guy if he's guilty. I said, but I said, there haven't been any arrests made. And this has nothing to do going back to Mar-a-Lago as much as this has to do with they've been investigating this guy for 5 years. They have found nothing. This is an ideology that I'm invested in seeing destroyed, not physically, but seeing destroyed, because it's not just anti-American, it's an anti-God ideology. And so I just wrap up this portion of the segment of the Exchange podcast saying, look, don't believe everything you said. Go research it. Go read it. That information's out there.
Yeah, this has been a wonderful exchange. I've enjoyed every second of it. I mean, I would tell everybody this. Take it from somebody who went to college for 6 years, 4 years for his bachelor's and 2 years for his master's. It ain't worth it. It ain't worth the stress if you can devote yourself to what you really want to do, because Thomas was right. What you want to do is you want to take all those books and you want to put them together, and you want to read, and you want to compare, and you want to ask yourself which one is still here and which one died off.
Yeah.
Because we are beings that can hold information and deduce what it is we need to do for the betterment, not only for ourselves, but for each and every one of us around us. This has been the Exchange Podcast. I'm JaVaughn Iversen with my co-host, Tom Paul Tipton, and I'm super excited to see what goes on next week. You guys stay safe. We love you.